Very much. You're the true MVPs for sitting to this very minute in this room. Our panelists have dispensed knowledge. Our speakers have impacted us. They've poured into us. And rooms like this are where the future of Africa is being designed, and we need to take conversations like this very serious because they're very important. But before we move on to our last session of the day, which is another power panel session, ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinct honor of bringing upstage Oscar Obiora. A round of applause for him.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I know it's been a very long stretch, but we're going to be very quick with this. So please just pay attention, okay? Please don't be sleepy, just pay attention, and we'll do this very fast. Okay, I looked at the topic. The topic for this panel session is From Consumers to Creators, Africa Sits at the Global Education Table. And for me, the topic is personal. It's not just about moderating this session. It's something I've lived by as an educator. It's something I preach to other educators. As teachers, as educators, there's a need for us to become creators of educational resources. In our classrooms every day, we use textbooks, we use workbooks, we use flashcards, we use all manner of resources that we get from different places. Now, what says that as an educator, you can't create the resource that you use in your class? What says that as an educator, you can't create resources that can be sold or exported to other countries in the world? I've created resources over the years, so I understand what creating resources is really about, challenges, opportunities, and all of that. So yes, we'll be delving further into this topic, but this time we'll be listening to distinguished experts who have garnered lots of experience in different areas of education. So I'd like to start with you, Daniel. We hear about a lot of enrollment and graduation rates every day. Oh, from this school, 5,000 people are graduating, 3,000 people are graduating. We hear of all of those numbers. But then we still hear employers say things like, oh, I'm looking for people in my organization, there's a skill gap, I have this role that I've not filled for 5 years. We hear of things like that. So 2 questions in one. The first one will be, are universities actually producing consumers and not creators? What exactly is happening? Why are we churning out lots of graduates every year and we keep hearing skill gap, we keep hearing of different things? And then number 2, if our universities are actually creating consumers, what needs to be done structurally for us to create more creators? So yes, that's it.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for bringing from having me here. So are universities producing consumers instead of creators? The honest answer is I do not think there's any research or data that shows that our universities are churning out consumers. The narrative, though, around our graduates seem to go towards the light of being consumers than creators. And a lot of times you see HR professionals or even organizations always complain of our young people or young graduates. I always like to push back on those complaints because I used to say we're all products of the same university system that we complain about. Though times have changed, but inherently we are still products of that system. And many of us are not doing badly, right? So the question then is, what worked for us when what made us change from the quote-unquote consumers to creators? And how can we provide those opportunities for those same young people? In my work in higher education, and when I have conversations with academics sometimes, they push back and tell me that universities are not supposed to. They do what they're supposed to do, right? As an institution of learning, ensure students are exposed to knowledge and theory and practices that will unlock the potential for them when they then go into the workplace. The argument is they're not supposed to be the ones to create creators, right? So I'm just trying to say that there is one end being defensive, there's one end saying, and I wouldn't say it's not a blame game situation, right? So I would say first of all that we're producing graduates. Whether they become consumers or creators is up to them, one, and it's up to the ecosystem that enable that potential and unlock that potential for them as well. For example, I studied biochemistry in school, right? I'm not doing anything related to biochemistry, but that does not mean that my education experience in school went to waste. The fact that I was able to be in a community where I was speaking every now and then, I was making presentations, I was collaborating with my classmates, those things unlocked skills that I translated into value after school, all right? So the question really is, how do we ensure that our graduates become creators and not see themselves as consumers, right? And it's left for the institution itself to provide that system, where they have access to opportunities for them to collaborate, work on problem-solving skills. Many universities now have innovation hubs trying to make them job creators rather than job seekers. But I'm saying even if the university does not provide that opportunity for them, it's left for the individual themselves, all right, to ask themselves questions on how they can collaborate and find those opportunities. And now the ecosystem, the organizations, individuals that are out of school, not to always blame those graduates or point the finger to them and say, you don't have the skills I need. Because when we push young people and say, you don't have the skills I need, go to the corner, and they go do something else, we then complain that there's a lot of uprising when we're the ones who are pushing them aside. You get what I mean? So I'm trying to say it's not really to blame the university. While I recognize that our universities have there's need for them to do more in that regard, but we need to recognize the challenges that exist in the ecosystem. It's also to say the ecosystem outside the university, are we also supporting those graduates that come out? But to answer the question directly, to say what can universities do to ensure that our young people are not just consumers, are not just job seekers, but are job creators, I think it's three things. Number one is, I said three things without knowing what I want to say, but I think it's three things. Number one is, beyond the theoretical academic experiences that young people are learning in school, there needs to be opportunity for them to learn more than that. All right, there needs to be hubs, innovation hubs, centers. We call it extracurricular activities in secondary school. There needs to be that opportunity for young people to explore. When you look at universities who have gotten it right, you will see that opportunities within. One of the reasons why many people want to go to school in schools in the United Kingdom, because you have access, you have the exposure and the ability to school with different people from other countries. And that is what is required, from a soft skills perspective for you to get out of school. And I think the second thing they need to do, there needs to be some sort of alumni industry handshake. For example, I was studying biochemistry for 5 years. I never saw a graduate of biochemistry in my 5 years of biochemistry. All right, I never saw the picture of a future that I wanted to feature in. So you're studying electrical engineering, but you don't know any electrical engineer, or you don't really know what you're studying this for. Does that make sense, right? And it's not compulsory also that you must study, you must end up doing what you're studying. The question is, are you learning the skills that you can use to unlock that potential after school? So there needs to be that linkages, industry, academia linkage, but even beyond industry, alumni. I read a post recently of a gentleman calling for the alumni of institution to go back to the institution and network and mentor the students. So there has to be that opportunity as well. And I think the third thing really is there needs to be we need to be patient with young people, all right? We need to recognize that there are a lot of challenges in that sector. Classroom sizes, often outdated curriculum, lecturer fatigue, and when you have that kind of sector churning out graduates, the question is, what kind of graduate do you expect? So there needs to be that support in that ecosystem, right? It's not, and we cannot solve that problem by just blaming the institutions. We need to ask the tough questions to see, what solutions are we creating for the institutions? Are we collaborating with the institutions to ensure that the graduates that finish schools are not just consumers, but creators? Yeah.
All right, so thank you very much. A lot of points that you just shared, but I'll just emphasize on two key things. And one thing I'm going to hold on to is the fact that you've said that there's no need for the blame game. I mean, we're saying, oh, universities aren't doing so well, that's why we don't have quality graduates. What about the individual? I think there's a need for self-responsibility. That's what I see. And it's something I also tell educators generally, self-responsibility. The school you work in will not always send you for all of the trainings. The school you work in might not give you all of the opportunities, but what can you do for yourself? So self-responsibility is important. How much can you invest in yourself? You can see where the world is going to as a person. Are you going in that direction, or are you just waiting for opportunities for yourself? And then another thing is, he talked about alumni industry handshake, and it's very important. So I mean, I'll keep narrowing this down to schools because, yes, I work in a school. I think there's that need for students to see alumni from time to time, for us to involve alumni in our school program. So you're having one school program or the other. Why don't you bring people that have gone through your system, people that actually, they've gone through the system, they've learned from your system. Younger students can actually see them, look up to them. They want to learn from them. They want to be like them. So that's something I think a lot of schools should work on, alumni industry handshake. Thank you very much, Daniel. And I'll move on to Oscar now. Oscar is the CEO of EduPoint. I'm right. Okay, so please, you can Google up EduPoint when we're done. You can search up Instagram, I guess, right? Okay, so just Google up EduPoint so you know more about what EduPoint is. So this is my first question. Coding and robotics is a big trend now for schools. If you're a teacher here and you do coding and robotics in your school, can you just raise your hand? You do coding, robotics, or you have a club like that. If you don't do it as a subject, as a club, okay? A lot of schools. It's the big trend now. If you're not doing anything coding, robotics, AI, it looks like you're out of the trend. There are a lot of Olympiads, challenges, competitions. Every day you're seeing someone winning something related to that. Now, what I really want to know is, how can we really measure it as schools? How do we really know that the experts, in quotes, who come to the schools to teach these things are actually teaching the right things? What are the standards we should be measuring them by? What are the things we should be looking out for in our students when it comes to coding and robotics? So that it's not just about photo ops and certificates and awards and all of that.
All right. Thank you, Kemi, and thank you, Brent, for inviting me. I've been here since 9 a.m., and it appears that people are glued to their seats because they're getting value for what they want. So back to the question you asked. Well, what we do at EduPoint is when we teach coding and robotics, we are not just concerned about teaching them how to build drones, build machines, but the critical thinking, the logical reasoning, and the problem-solving skills. Those are the critical things that measures the impact when you're dealing with coding and robotics, right? And I think a speaker once said something. She said that the ability for them to think beyond the normal academic activities, right? So, for example, the kids should be taught to build a particular solution. How do you solve small solutions that make big differences, right? So when they begin to build those projects beyond the optics and beyond the paparazzi that you see, what those kids are doing at 4 years old, 5 years old, 9 years old, is that they are trying to think beyond the normal. They're trying to see problems, and they are seeing opportunities in those problems. And what that does for them is that when they begin to advance, they are the entrepreneurs you see today. They're the guys that create the changes that you see in our country today. So to measure or to standardize the value for STEM activities is to look at the critical parameters that surround why you're teaching it. And for us, the model is problem-solving skills, critical reasoning, and logical understanding of what you're solving. Because only if you fit in those three parameters, you can actually solve real-life problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so one thing again from his statement is on projects, project-based learning, which is something we're all familiar with in education. Projects, how much can students actually do rather than theory? When it comes to practice, when it comes to hands-on education, what can students really do? So I'll go back to Daniel quickly. There's a concept of brain drain. A lot of talents in Africa, everybody wants to jack, but I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room that also want to. Anybody? Are you shy to raise up your hand? Anybody? Okay, I'm sure there'll definitely be people in this room that have that ambition to travel out of the country. That's just what that's what a lot of people want. So there's brain drain. People go out of the country, and that's just the end. They don't look back again to Nigeria. They don't look back to Africa. They're just gone. The keynote speaker was showing us the statistics of footballers from Africa that are actually playing for other countries in the World Cup. If all of those guys were playing for Africa, don't you think we would have gone very far in the World Cup if all of those guys were playing for us? So yes, brain drain, then there's brain circulation. What can we really do to African talents that are out there, or people nursing that ambition? How can they still be out there but still make impact in Africa? So that's the question. How can we avoid brain drain but promote brain circulation?
Interesting question. I would say generally, right, we need to move away from the mindset of brain drain, right? brain drain becomes a topic or an issue when the brains left are not enough, right, to offer value to the country where they're staying. Because inherently, globalization is the order of the day, right? I was watching a conference where they were asking the coach of Spain, the World Cup, to say, oh, you have Lamine Yamal, you have Williams, you have a couple of people who were not naturally, born Spanish, but globalization and immigration has enabled that. And now they're playing for Spain and even help Spain win the World Cup, right? And when they won the World Cup, you also see the nationals of that same country also excited about it, right? So globalization is the order of the day. So there's not a brain drain conversation. People would leave one country to another. Is how the world was designed to be. Even in the Bible, there was a lot of movements around. Abraham left one to another, one left one to another. So it is designed that way. It becomes an issue when there's no system in place in the host country to ensure that there are no deficiencies in the sectors where these brains are immigrating from. That's one. All right? So we need to look at that from an holistic standpoint to say the movement of talent is a natural phenomenon, is a natural phenomenon, is a psychological phenomenon, right? Having said that, yes, we need to then get to that brain circulation. And brain circulation is diaspora engagement. So the question then becomes, are you engaging your diaspora, right, to ensure that the skills and the talents and what they've learned by being in other climes, they're using it to improve the systems here. For example, in one of the work that I do called Alumni UK, is that we engage UK alumni. So people who have studied in the UK and are back to Nigeria. You were shocked about the number of them in return. We do a lot of engagements with them and all of and many of them are using those skills that they've gotten from foreign institutions to improve the talent. Yeah, you go to some of our higher education institutions, go to some of our universities, most of the lecturers, they had foreign degrees, and they are bringing changes to their current departments because of what they've learned. That's a clear example of brain circulation. You see what I mean? So the question, and when you look at the diaspora remittance from CBN and all those data, you see a lot of people are repatriating funds back. Your uncles and aunties who are now, in Canada, they send money back, and those monies, when they come back to Nigeria, they're used for one thing or the other. So they really were already experiencing brain circulation. The question then is, how can innovators, how can government, how can the ecosystem ensure that that there are not visible gaps in our current sectors? That's what the issues are. How are we ensuring that we're not trying to stop brain exporting our talent, exporting, our gifts? Our focus is not stopping it, but our focus should be, how are we ensuring that we have more of those talents? Look at India today. You go to many countries today. I saw a funny post, Math Olympiad, and they said that China has always won Math Olympiad for the past 25 years. And this year, the US won it. And if you look at the USA team, it was a team of 4 people that look like Chinese people, right? That is the benefit of brain circulation. They are now Americans by citizenship, but they look Chinese because brain circulation or globalization made that happen. But that does not mean that they lack good mathematicians in China. They have enough that they are willing to export. The same thing in India. Many companies today, their customer service, their enterprise processes are run by Indians, right? They've been able to build their talent in such a way that they're exporting it all over the world. The former Prime Minister of the UK was of Indian origin. You see what I mean? We currently have the leader of the opposition in the UK of Nigerian origin. But what are Nigerians doing? We're batching and saying, we need to support these things. So the focus really is, how do we encourage, how do governments, number one, ensure that there are no visible gaps in this sector? In the health sectors, if doctors are immigrating, our focus should not be to stop them. Our focus should be, how do we enable the ecosystem and ensure that doctors are first of all happy to work here, they are comfortable, they are well paid, and they see immigration as maybe something they just aspire to, but not something of them, we're not chasing them away to go do those things. You see what I mean? So government needs to put in structures in place to ensure that the brains are as comfortable here, right? And they have the skills and the talents to work and thrive here. Secondly, innovators, government sector, public sector, whatever, we need to do more in ensuring that we are producing enough of skilled labor, and which is one of the challenges we're having now, right? I was talking to someone yesterday and I was saying there needs to be a research that should show why are many people going into content creation. I'm looking forward to doing a research on that, and it could be that they're doing that because it's more like some sort of a quick win, all right, from an aspirational standpoint in terms of monetary value, right? And they're not seeing skilled labor as something that's aspirational. So it means that in the next 10 years, if something is not done, we're going to have a lot of shortage of skilled labor. So we need to encourage skilled labor. There needs to be job placements, internship and opportunities for them. More engineers are now doing TikTok. That's an error, all right? Engineers need to know that there's value in engineering. Whether there are jobs yet or no jobs, they need to start thinking about how can they solve local problems, and governments and policymakers need to encourage those things, right? So as educators in the house, if you work with young people that are studying in school right now, encourage them to see the value of what they are studying, because when we create more skilled labor, the question is not necessarily brain drain. The question now moves to brain circulation, because a Nigerian talent in the UK, a Nigerian talent in Ghana benefits them and also benefits us in the long run. Thank you.
All right, please let's put our hands together for him. That's a really profound response. And if there's something I'm holding onto from everything Daniel keeps saying, it's about having a very optimistic mindset. I mean, rather than seeing the problem, talking about brain drain, rather than seeing problems, it keeps talking about seeing another dimension to it, the optimistic side, which is really good. And then another thing he mentioned is how we should allow students see the value of what they are learning. I think that is really important as educators. Let students see the future of what they are doing in different ways. And I also think in faculties of education, for those who work in higher education, it would be great if sometimes teachers who are still in school, maybe 100 level, 200 level, can actually see other educators who are really doing well, who are really doing great, come back to the faculty of education, talk to them, let them know the opportunities that are out there. Because a lot of people in education faculties in different schools, everybody just wants to be there, collect the degree, and then leave afterwards, because they don't really see a future in that. So whether it's at the primary level, secondary level, higher education, our students should always see the future in what they're doing. We should always tell them why they're learning what they're learning. It helps them focus better. So thank you, Daniel. I'm coming back to Oscar now. Africa is often seen as a test market for different tools. So they create one tool in China, they send it to Africa for a test run. There's another tool from maybe Singapore, different countries. They just send it to Africa as the test run kind of site. What can we do to actually change that? How can we flip it such that we're actually doing things in Africa and we are pushing it to the world? I mean, on a global scale. There are lots of challenges with creating, with even penetrating the global market. So how can we go about that?
Yeah, thank you. I think the first thing is mindset and mind shift. Africans need to start seeing it that African problem can be solved only by Africans, built for Africans, for Africans. The moment we have that mindset, I think there will be less importation of some of these foreign tools, and Africa will stop being a dump yard for some of these products and solutions that we use today. I think it was Gordon Benson that was chipping that idea of some of the solutions that we are clamoring for abroad. Some of them can actually be built by Nigerians and Africans. And these are the kind of things we teach even in classroom, where you're teaching STEM, where you're teaching design thinking, problem-solving skills. What we teach most times is that we've localized our curriculum and content such that we are solving African problem, if possible, Nigerian problem, because only if you could solve Nigerian problem, we know that more than often, I mean, the basic problem that Nigeria have is likely what Ghana have. But over-reliant on foreign tools, foreign LMS, foreign solutions, will still put us there. So I think for the creators in the room, for the teachers in the room, it's not something you can change in one day. Because of course, in fact, in Nigeria, it's the only place where you see parents even bragging that their kids can speak better English than the other person, right? So it's a mind shift and it's a mindset thing. However, there's nothing bad in adopting external cultures, right? Because they've gone further, they've been exposed, they've got the experience. But the only way we can take ourselves out of poverty, out of being a dumpy for some of these solutions, or the only way we can take ourselves out of being over-reliant on some of these imported tools and learning systems is if the creators in the house, like myself and others, they start thinking African, they start thinking like Nigerian. They're not building because they want to scale up or export the product. But I tell you, and I think in the words of Kelechi, that when we start changing that narrative, they will be interested in what we are doing and how we can do it. Because they know that the market is here. And I don't have to explain the statistics to anybody. By 2050, Africa will be the most populous continent in the world. And a lot of the workforce will depend on Africans, whether we like it or not. So that's sort of the solace. That's the consolation for us. So I think we need to wake up and start thinking like African. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Please let's put our hands together for him. If there's anything again, we're going to hold on from this panel session. Let's see the optimistic side to different things. As we conclude this panel session, my final question is going to be for Daniel. When it comes to African education, we often hear the phrase capacity building workshop, capacity building this or that. As educators, I mean, I know that as a teacher, a lot of times we're told to go for trainings. Oh, go for this training on Singapore math, go for this training on Finland's education, go for this training on this. We keep learning from different places, which is not bad, it's great. But what do we have actually that can be exported? What are we doing right? I mean, that other education systems across the world can actually learn from. We learn from these people, that's great. But is there anything we're actually doing right? Is there something we have that the world actually ignores or underrates?
That's an interesting question. What do we have? I think it's a perception issue first, right? Because oftentimes when we go for capacity building workshops, we assume that maybe the participants do not have any capacity in the first place, so you are there to teach. You know, I facilitate trainings a lot, and I've facilitated in my work with Jobberman, Leap Africa, Mastercard Foundation. I've trained quite a number of people, right? Thousands of people. And when I facilitate, I try to first of all understand what is the baseline knowledge in the room, all right? And use that baseline knowledge to take them to where probably the objectives of the program are set, but not assuming that there's no knowledge in the room as well. And that's the same thing with educators and how they see Africa. What do we already have? Number one, we have resilience, right? We have resilience. And how African education has been able to remain consistent over the years, despite the various challenges, is a knowledge in itself that can translate to something tangible. And we can teach institutions and teach organizations and teach nations on how that has been done. What does Africa has? He mentioned something. We have a very young population. How we are nursing that young population to them and for them to get value. So that is something that is being underrated. One other capacity we need to recognize is that oftentimes we look at the word just globalization, but there's something also called glocalization, meaning what do we have that global or other countries need. And I'll give you an example. In our education, for instance, you see many institutions doing research that are very difficult to commercialize, right? But you ask yourself, you go to, let's say, Benue, and they'll tell you that there's a lot of food wastage, right, every year because there's not a lot of storage facility and all that. But when you go to the university and look at the research they're doing, many of the research are not answering the problems that they have. That is something that we're underrating, all right? And what you then you see the Chinese or other countries coming to solve our problems for us. We understand our problems. Our problems are, we know it. That's something that we're underrating. And a problem in itself is an opportunity. So that's why I say it's a perception problem. So one of the ways to unlock capacity, one of the things we're underrating is that we're underrating the opportunity in our problems. We're underrating the potential in our problem. Every problem is an indication to create value. All right? So when you see the news, as an entrepreneur, as an educator, you are saying, where is the problem? And how are we building to solve that problem? That's what we're lacking. So in a nutshell, we have capacity, And our capacity may not be one shining diamond, but it's something we need to dig deep and clean and bring out the value from it. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Please let's put our hands together for him. I'll just pick on one of his last statements, and he said, every problem is an indication to create value. It means regardless of where you find yourself, it's important that we look inwards. What are the problems happening here? Rather than complaining, oh, my organization isn't doing this, my organization doesn't have that. Looking at those problems and trying to create value is something that would help us move from consumers to creators. And I'll quickly just say something again for the educators in the room. For me as a classroom teacher, while I was a classroom teacher, there were challenges that I had with teaching my students that I converted into resources to teach the students in my classroom. From just using those resources inside the classroom to solve the problems within my classroom, I decided to start extending those resources to other teachers, just scaling it up, just selling, just moving on and on like that. And right now, from solving the problems within my classroom for my own students, I've profited and I'm still profiting from creating educational resources. So it's important that you always look at the problems around you and then how to solve it. Please, let's put our hands together once again for our panelists. Thank you so much. So we'll just give room for questions at this point. Just 2 questions, please.
My name is Adekombi Abiodun. I'm a CBT center person. I run the CBT and I'm also the ICT director of Taimoka West Polytechnic. Okay, so my question is that 2 days ago, the professor, the executive secretary of MBT, Mr. Buje, he made a statement. It's very interesting one, actually. He said that we taught people how to pass exam and not how to create values. And life doesn't award exams, they award the value that we create to them. Now, you were mentioning the points that time about if students go to school and then it's not necessary to use the certification they got, but what they want to do, decided they want to do in their life, they can do it, right? Now, my question is that not all candidates or not all students have that opportunity to be in a place where they can do other things apart from what they learn in the school. Even some of them, they didn't even have the opportunity to go to the school. They were sponsored by 1 or 2 people. So what about those people? What did they do? How did they meet up with life? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm not saying that you should deviate from what you studied in school, right? I'm saying that there are opportunities in what you studied and there are opportunities outside what you studied, right? That's what I was trying to say. Now, unfortunately, many of our institutions provide award memorization rather than understanding, right? Remember cram, right? You write and you cram, and if you ask you now what you studied many years in school, you've probably forgotten. But that's the reality that we find ourselves, right? And I hope that he made that statement in line that they're doing something about it to encourage more project-based learning, challenge-based learning, than just memorization. Define and conquer, right? Define this, where you can ask that question more intelligently, right? But what I'm saying is that when people come out of school, the first question is, are there opportunities in your sector? So let's take, for example, you studied microbiology, right? In other climes, a microbiologist, you're trying to design, or a biochemist, you're trying to design enzymes that are trying to understand genealogy or food mechanisms and the likes. Is very tailored to problem solution or problem solving. But in this climb, there's not a lot of opportunities in that area. Does that make sense? So what do? Do you then start complaining? Do you start, roaming around the streets? Or do you then just say, you know what, I'm just going to go and learn a skill? What I'm saying is that inherently in what you've studied, beyond just the definitions and the concepts and the framework, what are the other things you're picking out from school? Communication, public speaking, problem solving, right? For example, we teach that entrepreneurship is not the same as skill acquisition. People go and learn photography and say they're now entrepreneurs, but you're not an entrepreneur, you just learned a skill. Entrepreneurship is solving problems, is creating value, is innovating, right? So that's why you can have somebody have a fashion house. He doesn't know how to sew, but he's very rich because he has tailors that are sewing for him. He doesn't have the skill of tailoring, but he understands that there is a gap in the fashion space. I will bring tailors together, I will come up with designs, they will sew it for me, and I will sell it out. That's entrepreneurship. Does that make sense? So I'm saying that when we teach young people in school, when they come out of school facing the world and asking, what problem am I solving? what value am I creating? A lot of young people come out from school with and if it's the value in what you've studied, fine. You see what I mean? But when I talk to a lot of young people sometimes, say, I studied this. So what was your plan? I'm looking for a job in this. That should not be your first orientation. Your question is, what solution or what problem do I want to solve in this area? So when you even go for an interview, that is how you're shaping your conversation. Does that make sense? All right? So if you're looking for a job in engineering, I'm saying I'm coming to use my engineering skills to do XYZ, XYZ. Not I can work anywhere, as you typically hear. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So that's what I was saying there. But thank you for that question.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Davidson. Actually, my question goes to you, Mr. Daniel. When you started speaking, you talked about alumni going back to school, and then I remember one of the first things Mr. Godwin said was degree losing value. And that actually reminded me of what my friend's dad used to say. He says secondary school university certificate is now like a secondary school certificate. Everybody has it. That is one. And then number two, I used to teach in a school. NYC posted me to a private school. The first time I got there, I wore my uniform. That's my NYC uniform. And then the next time I wore my uniform there, the school told me that I don't wear it again. I was like, why? They said the parents are complaining they don't want an NYC student teaching their children. And then I remember back in my own days, if my mom sees someone wearing NYC uniform, prayer section has started. Or I think every one of us can relate to that. So that's now, how do we return us back to this place of value where we appreciate this kind of things? Because these are things that we don't appreciate anymore. Is it because of the way we are moving, like the improvements, civilization, globalization? Is that why we don't appreciate any of these things anymore? And secondly, talking about access. We talked about access earlier, and then I remember when I was trying to apply for NYU scholarship, and then after the whole application, NYU reached out to me and told me, hey, guy, if we give you... So they said government policy says Nigerians are not allowed to be in the USA. And then they were like, if I should choose either the Shanghai University or the Dubai University. But I was like, no, I want to study robotics. That's in NYU, so I have to go to NYU. And at the end of the day, I did not take their choice, and then I lost the admission. So now how do we create access for us now? Because this the government has gotten wrong, which is not giving access anymore. Imagine I having a robotics degree now from a university like NYU, coming back to create a solution, and then this is a Nigerian-based solution. Imagine the kind of sense that will bring, the kind of value that will bring to our country. But these are becoming difficult for people like us. So how do we create access, and how do we create value? Thank you very much.
The first question, to be honest, the answer to your two questions, I do not know, right?
True.
But
True.
the expectation is that the panelists, you have to say something, right? So let me see something, right? So the first question, why is NYSC or graduates losing value? I do not have enough data to show that they're actually losing value, right? I'm a graduate of an institution, and I'll say that I'm getting value. Why are you not getting value? You don't get value. At least you get value one way or the other. So why the perception is changing has to do a lot of is a whole range of issues. I thought in my NYSC, I thought mathematics, and I was pretty good at it. My students loved me. All right. So I don't know why that has lost value, and I don't think it's losing value. Maybe that was a context that we need to probably explain. So I will not use that as a blanket statement, because I feel that our graduates still provide value one way or the other, because I know we've abused this word, but we're the future and the present of the country, right? On the second one, yeah, many countries have the policies that seem not to encourage people to come in anymore, right? But they give you options. For example, you are the one who didn't take the options, but that doesn't mean the university not give you options. You are the ones who didn't take the options. So access to higher education is still there. There are scholarships opportunity. Many institutions now are doing something called transnational education, where they are setting up branch campuses or joint degrees. For example, UK University now is collaborating with University of Lagos to have a joint degree. So you don't need to necessarily go to the UK to study that program because there's already a collaboration with the local institutions. One university is also building a campus here. So many universities are doing a lot of work to broaden the access, right? And many universities in Nigeria also are doing quite well, right? And again, I always say that the degree in itself is not enough. It's what you do with the degree. So when they say degree is losing value, you can argue it and say, who owns the degree? It's what you're doing with the degree. 2 PhD holders, depending on the quality of the thesis, varies. You get what I mean? Right? So I would say that look at your robotics or whatever, look at, go to EduPoint, learn, just leverage the resources that you have, improve your portfolio as well, and those access become available. And they give you the options, you take the options that you're given. Yeah, that's what that. Do you want to add? I think the last point.
Again, I don't think the system is losing value, like he said. I think it's the perception of that school, tandem with the parent that came to that school. I have that experience too. There are certain parents that they know what they want, but maybe the school haven't convinced them very well. The fact that even as an NYSC tutor, you can teach coding. So I think the gap was the school didn't convince the parent very well the importance of your skill. So I've seen young people, even while in 400 level, they are building stuff. So don't let that situation sort of put your back on the ground, right? So it calls for more reflection, but more importantly, you just need to keep developing yourself, because that school you are in basically is just your startup point. It's not the ending, right? So as you move further, you just begin to enhance your skill. And for the other one, regarding being selected or not being selected, the truth is that I've really seen people who said they were overly qualified, but they were not selected. So it's not just you. If you apply for scholarship a lot, you know that sometimes it is not even your class of degree that make them select you. Sometimes it's even the volunteering work you do. That's why a lot of times what I tend to advise students is pay more attention to volunteerism. As simple as being a volunteer in BRINT program like this, you can put that in your SOP. That can work for you. So, but a lot of people these days, they don't want to volunteer. They will tell you that they want to work and earn something. So that's why there's usually that, because the guys out there, they are not looking for the first class, which is very good, but they are looking for the extra skill, like someone said earlier. That extra skill, those things you did. How are you able to do a project? How do you become a team player? How do you become a team leader also? So you can't give what you don't have. You can't say, if I read your SOP and you lie, I would know. So it's very important that we tell the young people of today to pay more time on volunteerism. There you can build your portfolio. And who knows, that can be just the edge you have over other candidates. Thank you.
The questions have been well answered, and I believe that we all gain value from this session. Don't forget to look inwards, look for problems rather than looking for solutions. Look for problems and be the solution in your space. So please let's put our hands together once again for our panelists. Thank you so much. And with that, we've come to the end of this panel session. Thank you.